Welcome to Inherently Distinctive.
Hey everyone, welcome back to an all-new episode of Inherently Distinctive with attorney Mark Goodman. I'm your host, Mike Leon. Mark here is a Nevada-based intellectual property attorney. He's been helping startups, creative, and small business owners protect what they've built through smart trademark and patent strategy. And today we're once again joined by Ted Sutton. Ted is a Nevada and Wyoming business attorney. He's been helping entrepreneurs and investors form and maintain companies that protect their assets. Today's episode, we're going to dive into the new Corporate Transparency Act, what it means, what you need to know, and also we're going to talk a little bit about Ted's upcoming book. Gents, good to see you guys. As always, Ted, I mentioned it here in the intro, but what is the new Corporate Transparency Act for the uninitiated, and why does it matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. The Corporate Transparency Act is a new law that requires small businesses to report information to the federal government. Now, it's a unique law because corporate law over the course of American history has been reserved to the states. It's been exclusively a state law thing. But what the Corporate Transparency Act did is it required businesses to report information to the federal government. So that the aims of passing the act were to combat illegal activities like money laundering, terrorist financing, things of the like. And so what these businesses, which is all LLCs, corporations, limited partnerships, things of that nature, what they were required to do was to report information to FinCEN, which is a branch of the U.S. Department of Treasury. Now, it's being challenged in court right now. So there was kind of a hot potato phase a year ago where a court was saying it's constitutional, it's unconstitutional. So it's still being worked out there. But ever since President Trump got reelected and he took power again, he and the U.S. Department of Treasury in March said that they're not going to enforce the Corporate Transparency Act, which I think is good because, frankly, I think the law is very ineffective. I don't think all of these money launderers and terrorist financiers are going to report information to the federal government anyway. So it's on hold right now. It could come back if a Democrat wins in 2028. But an interesting thing is that because corporate law has been reserved to the states, there are other states that are passing their own transparency laws too. The first one is New York. They enacted the New York LLC Transparency Act, and it's set to take effect January 1st of 2026. Now, it only applies to LLCs. It doesn't apply to corporations and limited partnerships. But LLC owners would have to report the same pieces of information to the New York Department of State. And if they don't do it, the penalties are very severe. They can face penalties of $500 a day. And if they don't report this information, they legally cannot conduct business in the state of New York. So the law has some teeth, much like the Corporate Transparency Act did. And it could be one of the first dominoes to fall. New York passed this law. I believe California has something else in the works. But I wouldn't be surprised if other states follow suit here in the next few years. But, if you have intellectual property or other assets, it's really important to be aware of these new laws just because they're going to impose an additional burden on LLC owners and people who hold title to assets.
Yeah. Mark, it funnels into your work, and I'm sure a lot of small businesses, they start locally, they grow fast. What are some things that tend to surprise the owners most, especially if they're expanding into other states? Is it the law, like Ted just said?
I mean, one question I was thinking Ted could address on the Corporate Transparency Act. I mean, like if there was a congressman or senator in your office that voted for the Corporate Transparency Act, would you smack that person upside the head? Because I would. That's one question you can answer or not. Because this law basically, and it is on hold a little bit with the court system, but it makes I think Garrett Sutton told me 4 million businesses.
No, it's 30. It's 30 million.
30 million. Okay, so 30 million businesses are going to have to spend a bunch of time and money on something just so the government can maybe try to get information that it already would have the right to get via subpoena or other process anyway. So, okay. Um, don't get me too started on the soapbox here. But putting that aside, the state to state issues with this new corporate transparency law in New York that you're mentioning could be a very sticky wicket for some folks, because one of the questions I often get, even without a corporate transparency act of a state in place, is just when do you have to qualify to do business with the state? So, like, for instance, with this New York thing, Ted, if I have a business that just sells over the internet, right? At what point do I have to deal with the New York Corporate Transparency Act? And at what point is it okay to say, like, I'm not part of New York, I don't live in New York, my company's not incorporated there, right? What do we do, Ted? Talk to me.
Yep. So the New York LLC Transparency Act, it only applies to entities that are either formed in New York or qualified to do business there.
Okay.
So I think if you have a New York LLC, you own a rental property in New York, you would need to comply with the act. Let's say that you're a Delaware LLC and you're foreign qualified in New York, you would need to submit information to the New York Department of State. I think what you were hitting on was kind of more of a gray area where you're doing sales and you have certain transactions in the state. I think each state has their requirements there for what constitutes doing business there where you need to foreign qualify. So that depends. I mean, if you only have a few sales in New York every year, you wouldn't need to do it. But if you have employees there, if you have a lot of sales, in that case, you'd need to register in New York and comply with the New York LLC Transparency Act. So, in a lot of cases, you're registered there or you're foreign qualified, you need to comply. But, if you don't have an LLC registered there, you're not doing enough business, you'll be okay.
Yeah. It's interesting because it brings up even more questions for me. Again, not a lawyer. You guys are in this space. But Mark, for business owners out there, they get a trademark, they think automatically it protects them nationwide, as opposed to once it's registered in one state. How do you explain to folks the difference between the state and federal protection? Like,
That's a good question to hit on, to focus in on. So trademark is unique. You have both state trademarks and federal trademarks. Now, if you're going to sell across state lines at all, you can get a federal trademark. And usually what we do is let's just get a federal trademark because it does cover the whole country and it's enforced by federal law. State trademarks are valuable where if you have a business that's local in nature, right? You have just a local shop, for instance, typically, especially if you have a brick and mortar location in one state, maybe you're not doing any business across state lines and you're really limited to just trademarking in your own state. And it's okay to have both, right? You can layer this up and give yourself just even more protection. Get state trademarks for the states that you're located in and also go for a federal trademark registration. Incidentally, it's the standard for what constitutes doing business across state lines is super low, right? So for instance, restaurants in New York City, there have been court cases where there's been a dispute and the courts have upheld their trademark, even though they just have a restaurant in New York City, because people go to New York City from all around the country to enjoy the great restaurants there, for example, right? And that's been held to be good enough. And they advertise in places that people would see out of state as well. So it's pretty low. So most of the time, let's just get a federal trademark registration and get the whole country, and then consider whether you want to also layer on the state as well.
Yeah. Mark, let me stay on you for a second. What tends to happen in a situation, a company does expand into a new region, they find out there's another business that's already using a similar name in that region. What happens in that instance?
Well, first of all, the better way to do this is to try to understand this earlier before you're even
Right, filing.
starting the business, right? To understand what, do a full trademark search and analysis and figure out what might be out there. Because when we do trademark searches, we look at both registered and trademarks applications and just businesses that may not have a registration, right? So one thing that can happen is that there can be situations where another business may maintain the right to your trademark within their local area, even though you might have national rights. That's at least in some instances possible. So I think if that other company had started and used the trademark before you were using it in commerce, right? The trademark follows use in commerce, right? So generally speaking, the first to use a trademark in commerce has the priority. And so that's why we want to make sure nobody else is using it before, or we settle in on what our mark's going to be.
Yeah. Ted, at the beginning of this, we talked a little bit about your book, or we teased it. I would love to learn a little bit more about the book you're writing. What's it about? When can we expect it to hit shelves?
Yeah, so it's actually a book and a card game. So it's going to be a really good, learning material that we can use. So it's called Greenback's Book of Law, and what it is it simplifies the law and everything I effectively learned in my first year of law school. Simplifies that for middle and high school kids, but it's narrated by Greenback the Golden Doodle, who's a knowledgeable dog. His master's an attorney. He goes into work every day and he learns the law by sitting next to his master's desk. And so he makes it really fun and enjoyable. It's not written in legalese. It's written at a third grade reading level. And the nice thing is that there's quizzes at the end of each chapter, but there's also a card game that comes along with it to reinforce your knowledge. One of the things I noticed is that only lawyers know the law. However, I think it's important for kids who are coming of age to at least have a basic understanding of it. And, I think there's a real societal void there because they aren't teaching civics anymore in school. People have no idea what's in the Constitution. They have no idea how our legal system works. And in a lot of cases, I've seen young kids end up in trouble because they don't understand that their actions have consequences. And, they just don't understand the legal system. So I think that this book will be really helpful because it can help a lot of people out there who want to know the law, who need to know the law. And this will just be very approachable and very palatable. And I think a lot of people can benefit from the knowledge that's going to be in that book.
Yeah, understanding the law is something that I think a lot of people don't do, and the civics part of it, I totally agree. And Mark, it funnels into a little bit of what we were talking about with respect to you, because you're licensed across multiple states. You've practiced before the U.S. Patent Office. How does that experience shape the way you advise clients nationally about all of this?
So, I mean, look, you, um, I'm really actually excited about Ted's book for my kids. Is one of the things I wanted to mention. I mean,
Yeah.
my kids as of this recording are age 13, 10, 7, and 3. So you could argue I got a little carried away in this whole reproduction project, but here we are, right? And I think it's, hey, is this going to be available for Christmas, Ted?
No, not yet.
Yeah,
I
maybe
think,
next year.
yeah, we're in Q4, so there's a lot of people who are
Yeah.
publishing books before Christmas, but sometime next year. I'm pushing for sooner, but sometime next year.
But yeah, I'm with you, Ted. The level of civics education is very hit and miss out there. I don't know. I can't really speak to, has it declined over the years? Sure seems like it. If you go poll people about very basic questions about civics and law, how our laws are made or enforced, or the three branches of government are, I think a lot of people really are stumped. What has been your experience in that regard, Ted?
Yeah, so there's a lot of kids out there who just aren't getting the information they need. They're not getting financial information, and that's why Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad book sold so well, because it was financial education to the masses. When it comes to civics knowledge, it's actually quite frightening because 90%, there's a study out there that says that 90% of Americans cannot name the three branches of government. And there's more Americans who can name 5 Kardashians as opposed to the 5 rights in the First Amendment. So, it's a little scary just because, I think people get outraged over some sort of political matter, but when they do so, they don't really understand the checks and balances that are in place and how each branch of government's supposed to operate. So it covers that. It also covers what happens when you do bad actions. So it's not just civics. I mean, it's stuff that it covers like torts and contracts and property law, all the stuff we learned in our first year. There's a character in the book who gets himself into lots of legal trouble, and he's a teenager. And I've noticed that there's a lot of teenagers who do stupid stuff and they don't know that their actions have consequences. And then when they do that stupid stuff, they end up in court, with a criminal charge on their record even. I mean, it's really unfortunate, but this book is here to help any parent who wants their kids to be responsible adults. So it covers civics, it covers the Constitution, it covers everything that we learned in our first year of law school. And, you also have a card game to reinforce your knowledge. So this is something that I really sincerely hope helps lots of Americans just get a baseline understanding of our legal system. And it's narrated by a dog, and people love dogs too. So the cover is really cute. I'm not going to show you now, but make sure to check it out on Amazon and the Tenero storefront whenever that comes out.
Yeah. Understanding of legal and civics. I totally agree with you guys on that. We need more education on that front for sure. Gents, thanks for the time and insights on this. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Mike. It was good talking to you again. And you, Mark.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Thanks. And thanks to everybody out there listening to this episode of Inherently Distinctive with attorney Mark Goodman. And thank you to Ted Sutton. You want to learn more about protecting your ideas and invention brands, do me a favor, visit goodmanlawnevada.com. If you want to learn more about all the work Mark's doing, you can check out corporatedirect.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave a review and comment, or share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. We'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.